Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 163 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network, the DAP network, if you will, and we will. And I'm here tonight with, I think, the first time I am hosting solo anyway, like just me and him. The doctor himself, Drew Prawl. Drew, how
What's
you
up?
doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy to be here.
Yep, we're just about halftime of this scintillating Steelers Titans game, so we'll try and keep you more entertained than this game is so far. But we got a great guest with us tonight. It's been a while. We've had him on the show before, but it's been too long. That Superflex dude, John Hogue. John, how you doing tonight?
What's up, boys? It's been way too long. Thanks for having me back. It's been so long that I actually don't think Drew was part of the show yet
Oh no.
last time I was here. So a lot of evolution. So glad I could be here to witness the next step.
Yeah, we're always bringing on new hosts, and people come in, they come out, they come back. It's fun. So, um,
It's a
but
management issue.
yeah, sorry about that. But we're gonna get right into. We have just one piece of news I was gonna do here. We have a little news section on our show sheet. The only really big news of this past week is the Kirk Cousins injury. I think Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles. Was having a very good season. It's like I think QB like 7 or something like that. As always, Kirk is a QB1, but he was doing even better than usual. I feel like. So, what does this mean for Kirk Cousins and his dynasty value, Drew? Are you looking to get him cheap? Because I think most people think he's going to be back next year. I mean, he's not young, but he's 34. He's probably got a few years left in the league at least. Was this something, or are you just getting all those young guys and you don't care about getting a Kirk Cousins?
Give me all the picks, Rocky.
I know
Yeah, I,
exactly.
I
He's not a
thought
pick,
maybe
so
we might need to do a well check on you on Monday or Tuesday, see how you're doing, since I'm sure he's probably on, I don't know, what, 40% of your rosters across your leagues at this point.
I was surprised to see I only have 6 or 7 shares out of like
Okay,
35 teams, so it's like 20%.
not
I
bad.
but my highest owned, it turned out when I looked, was Jimmy Garoppolo, who I have on
Oof,
9 teams, and he's done for the season,
oof.
not from injury, but
Yeah,
from the Raiders implosion. So
yeah. But Cousins, I'm kind of undecided still. I've got him on probably, I think, 4 dynasty rosters out of about 20 at this point, and a couple of contenders. So I am looking at moving him to somebody who maybe wants to sit on him till next year and hope that he comes back and performs well. I think Rodgers, some of his clips have given people some more optimism that Kirk Cousins, who's not a mobile quarterback, really just needs to be able to throw the ball, could be back next year. Question marks, of course, where he'll be, if he'll still be in Minnesota, which it sounds like a lot of people would like that. I think that makes sense. But so I think for me, I would be okay if I could get some sort of usable return on a contender for him. The tough part is the valuation when you're moving him right now is pretty low. I think for a lot of people, they want to really kind of buffer that risk there. So if I'm on a non-competing team, I'm certainly willing to see if I can get a package with him in it. We all love having him on our rosters, and yeah, this year was a lot of teams that are in the top 2 or 3 in their leagues probably have him on their rosters. Even when we get to the Find Me a Trade section tonight, right? I think the number 1 team that's 8-0 in this league we're going to talk about has Kirk Cousins on IR right now, which is pretty indicative, I think, of where a lot of people are. So, but yeah, for me, if I'm contending, I'm certainly looking at some ways to maybe move him to a team that needs to get some points off their board. And yeah, I'm good with either direction you want to go, but I probably lean less toward trying to acquire him actively.
yeah, I'm with you. I have like I said, I have about 6 or 7 teams, all of them contending, that had Kirk Cousins. I haven't done anything with him yet. I know we talked about it on Trade Addicts a little this week. Russ has actually been sending him out, trying to get quarterbacks for him, which we both kind of agree is not necessarily the best move. Maybe you don't always trade the injured guy whose value just took a dip to get a guy to replace him. But like one of the trades he did. I'll throw this to you, John. And we have one that we're actually going to talk about from a Junkies league too. But I think it was Cousins and a second for Baker and a third on a contending team. Are you doing that?
Oh man, yeah. I think you have to for a contender to keep it rolling. But man, like that feels steep.
It does to me too. I said it on the show.
Like the second feels like it's on the wrong side. But I mean, maybe it just hasn't totally sunk in that we're not going to see Kirk Cousins again until next year, and we're not totally sure what uniform he's going to be wearing when we do. So maybe that's part of it. But I just made a trade with Mr. Outhouse. I sent him Cousins for Pickett in a second. So like that felt a little bit more, and I hate Kenny Pickett.
I was just gonna say I'm not a Kenny Pickett fan either.
But like the second really kind of is the driver in both of those trades to me,
So where are you guys valuing Cousins? Like if we're doing the normal in terms of draft picks, is he a high second at this point? Anyone who wants to chime in?
That's probably as low as I try to value him in the package. I'd like to think I could get 2 seconds for him, if I were going to get just straight picks. But the problem is, he's probably going to a non-contending team, which means one of them is probably a high or mid second right now. So you'd be depending on them having, maybe a contender second or something like that. So that's what I think ideally he'd be valued as, like maybe like a top 15 pick.
Yeah, and I would be interested in buying at that price, contending or non-contending, especially if you're rebuilding but close. I mean, like I said, I think he's still going to be starting the next couple of years. Quarterbacks can come back from an Achilles within a year or so and still perform well. So on the teams I have them, I'm more inclined, like I said, I'm not doing what Russ did in trading Cousins and maybe just trying to go cheaper and just get somebody that can get me quarterback points, like throwing I don't know if you still have to pay a first for Geno Smith at this point. If you do, I'm not doing that, but somebody like that. If Stafford is just a temporary thing, you can get him fairly cheap. Like if he's back in a week or two. I mean, I think he's not practicing this week, but they haven't ruled him out, so it's not even definite he's not playing this week. I don't think he will, but
bye week next week.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So it might be a couple weeks, but down the road, guys like that, I'm fine with that. Minshew, I'd be fine trading a second for a Minshew, something like that. That's kind of the thing I would be looking to do to replace Cousins. Try to get a super cheap guy.
Man, go get Dobbs. Go get Josh Dobbs.
Is he going to start in Minnesota though?
Well, not this week.
Yeah.
It sounds like it'll be Jaron Hall, but I mean that that has to be the move.
That's what I thought too when they made the trade, but then I heard like it's just in case Jaron Hall isn't good enough, which I would expect he wouldn't be. But
like they knew that when they took him in the 5th round, 6th round. Like they know what they've got.
Yeah. So I don't hate that either. Yeah, Dobbs you should be able to get super cheap as well. So okay, so we will move. Oh, I did want to go into that's right, the Junkies trade, because we always like to give some listener league updates. I'm not going to get all into the records later, but we do like to talk about some trades. And in Junkies 2, there was another Cousins trade I wanted to get your guys' take on, which Dynasty Eeyore traded Calvin Ridley to Laughing Lizards for Kirk Cousins. Both of these teams are actually in the top half of the league. I don't think either's in like first or anything. I can actually pull up the league while we talk about it and give you some context. But John, what do you think on that one? And then Drew, I want to get your opinion too. But I'll start with you, John.
Yeah, Eeyore Corey. He's a. I believe that he's a QBXer. Not always, but I think that he subscribes is the way I understand it. At least that's what he says. I don't. I might just be just trying to
maybe just tells you that, John.
Probably. I think that's anyone who says they use QBX. They're probably just saying it to my face, and then no. But like it because to me Cousins is more of a rebuild type of move. But I mean, this feels like a discount to me. Ridley highly replaceable at this point. And this is without even knowing what his wide receiver depth currently looks like. I just, kind of regardless, you can find the scoring and you can make that up, through waivers or a small trade somewhere else. And now, you've kind of got a backup quarterback ready to go next year.
For context, Junkies, the 2 and 3, one is a little different, but both of them are 14 teams start 11. So getting a serviceable guy like Ridley does mean a little more when you have a guy that has not given you anything. But I'm still with you. I think I would gladly send a Ridley for a Cousins, even if I'm competing. I think I would be okay if I have the depth to deal with it. And just the guy who got Ridley, it's not even not too bad at receiver for a 14-team league. He's got Cup, Lockett, Collins as his top 3. Then it's
nice.
He also has Hopkins actually as like his 4, so that's not too bad. And then he added Ridley on top of that. He does, and his quarterbacks are Baker and Geno. So, but like I said, he is competing. He's 5-3. The guy who traded away Cousins, so he wanted the points. The guy that Corey who got Cousins actually is 6-2. Has Sam Howell, Trevor Lawrence, and I guess now Derek Carr. So yeah, looks like he is doing QBX here, John.
Yeah, that a boy.
He also had Cousins, and this is a 14-teamer. He had 4 starting quarterbacks, and he also now has Aiden O'Connell, who's now a starting quarterback. So
that's because Josh and I have 0 starting quarterbacks in that league. That's how that distribution worked out.
Yeah, I have. I think. Well, I did actually have. I had Ritter and not Ritter. We do have Ritter, but I had Richardson and Fields, and neither one has been starting for weeks. But we're rebuilding anyway, so that's fine.
That's perfect then.
And yeah, then Ritter was our only quarterback, and now he's not starting. So we're just shedding points everywhere. It's beautiful. But Drew, what are your thoughts on the Ridley for Cousins deal and Junkies?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, what does Ridley have for points in this league, anyways, for the year? Even if he doubles it for the rest of the year, it's not going to be a huge help. So, yeah, I would love to have the Cousins side. And then, now that you've got 4 quarterbacks, I mean, what kind of flexibility do you have either in the offseason as Cousins comes back or as you make a push, right? I could totally see using one of those quarterbacks, if he needs to make another trade come playoffs to get, that final piece to give him a push over the hump this year. So, yeah, every day I would do that trade to get Cousins and give Ridley away this year.
Yeah, Ridley's averaging just over 11 points per game.
Yeah, and that's based on what, 2 weeks worth of productivity?
Basically, I was just going to say he has 4 games that are 7 points or less. So yeah, and 2 games 20 plus that are kind of carrying that average there a little bit. So okay, so that's it'll finish up our Kirk Cousins talk, and kind of the main topic I put down for this week was just sort of like mid-season evaluation, mid-season questions. It's a mid-season of the NFL pretty much at this point. It's a 17. There's no exact halfway point, but we're 8 weeks and a game in, so that's just about there. So one thing I wanted to ask you guys, we're just past the halfway point, really, of the regular season of fantasy leagues too. So, what are you doing with? And I wanted to ask this because I saw our Find Me a Trade. It kind of fits this, and it made me think of the question. At this point in the season, what are you doing? If you haven't already started rebuilding, what are you doing with the middling 4-4 team? Let's say you're like somewhere between 5th and 7th in points. The points match the record. Are you at this point? There's probably multiple people who've already been rebuilding in your league. So are you just figuring I'll push the chips in and I'm at 8 weeks in, let's ride it out and see what happens? Maybe I get lucky. Or do you start thinking now about selling stuff off? Drew, I'll start with you and then we'll go to John.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind when I looked at that question was, I've got to look at my schedule and what do I have for players with bye weeks? Like what is my record going to look like in another 3-4 weeks as we hit a couple more bye weeks here? Start looking at the schedule for your opponents as well. If you're playing somebody that has a bunch of, like, they have CMC, they have Kittle, they have Ayuk, they have Purdy this week, then you have a better shot at maybe getting an easier W this week if you don't have a bunch of guys on bye. But in general, if you haven't gotten into the rebuild yet, you're probably too late, and you're still have. It's one of those, you're going to try to get into the top 4 picks, and you're probably going to end up with 6 or 7 again, unless you really sell some stuff off at a steep discount, which is probably ill-advised at this point as well. So I think at this point you try to ride it out. You try to make some cheap moves like you guys are talking about. If you need a cheap quarterback, go get a cheap quarterback. You start looking at some cheap running backs if you just want to start throwing some thirds and fourths out there to see if you can get what'll it take to get a Zach Moss or a Jerome Ford or maybe a Jaleel McLaughlin at this point, now that Javonte looks healthy again, and just see if you get lucky a couple weeks. And once you hit playoffs, right, most of us are in single elimination. Anything can happen. And I think you hope that you bounce higher than try to tank yourself and be disappointed when you end up with the 106 or 107.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there about the schedule, and that kind of plays into one point I was going to mention too, which is, well, like you said, maybe you haven't played the tough teams yet. Maybe that's part of the reason you're 4-4 or something like that. And maybe you're playing a little above. You're not even a 4-4 team, but you've got a lot of the cupcakes. So a good thing to do always is to kind of look at your all play record to see how realistic moving forward is. If you're like not even matching that 500, it might be, you might want to think even more. Even though, like you said, you're behind the 8 ball at this point, this far into the season, you still might want to think a little more about selling off. I think if you're like, if you have like a 400 winning percentage and you happen to be a 500 team, 400 all play, that pushes me that way a little more. But John, what do you think?
Yeah, the teams in the middle just have the most complicated formula to try and navigate. Like, there's just so much to it. You're also looking at, you still kind of look at your roster and say, all right, there's some injuries, some guys are about to come back from injuries. They've kind of left me with a little bit of a losing streak here where I was doing well before that. You look at some of the other teams. I mean, with all the turnover at quarterback, a lot can change just kind of across the board, not just the quarterback position, but this can affect wide receiver play. This can affect tight ends. This can affect game scripts, which affects the running back. So there's just so much that can still change at this point in the season. And I think that you have to consider all of it, before you make a decision to punt. And, above all else, Drew made the point. This is the big thing. There are teams in your league who have been tanking for several weeks now, if not the whole season at this point. So, you're trying to get to 101 and there's just no shot. Like, you've got to be 1 of 1. In order to get to the playoffs, you just got to be 1 of 6 and then see what happens. So, the odds are just so much more in your favor to just make a run at it. So again, I'm kind of navigating just like all of the different variables that go into this, but my default is to contend, and I'm looking for a Loctite excuse to get out of that is the only way I'm going to bail on it.
Hey, I'm basically with both of you on that, despite what I said about, checking your own play, possibly bailing out. I do tend to lean towards the trying to contend end of it. For all the reasons you guys said. Just you're behind the rebuilders already. You're not gonna get as high of a draft pick. You're probably at this point peaking at like 104 if you're lucky. I think it just does make sense. I will say this goes a little bit against what I'm going to do in the Find Me a Trade section, where we also have a middling team. So I do think what John said about looking at your roster is really important too, though. Like, when we get to that team, I didn't check their all play record, but I was surprised that team was even 4-4 and 7th in points, actually. So that one made me lean towards maybe not going in for it. But in general, in a vacuum, that's kind of what I'm doing, unless the roster or something else is telling me otherwise. But the other part we wanted to do with the midseason evaluation was kind of talk about some players. I have a bunch of guys I have here. I don't think we're going to get to them all, but I just wanted to kind of similar to what Andrew's been doing more on a weekly basis. I wanted to do it more on a seasonal basis. It's just guys, some surprises, some disappointments, where we're at on them, what we're doing with them. Guys who've underachieved, overachieved. So I listed a few at each position. As I said, we probably won't talk about all of them, but we'll start at quarterback because we have John here. We have to talk quarterbacks. The first, I started with the surprises. So one of the biggest ones to me, because I've been a big detractor of him, is, and this is all these, by the way, all these rankings are points per game, and I went by Trade Addicts leagues because that's just basically my default at this point. But Sam Howell, QB 8 on the season. That's points per game, not total points. So a lot of that is beating up the Eagles' ragged secondary in 2 different games. But he has been pretty good overall. He's had some bad games, but he's a guy I did not expect much out of it all. I was not a fan. I called him when I watched this tape, I called him a career backup in my mind, and it still could be the case. But John, what are your thoughts on Hal? I'm curious. I don't know if I've heard you talk about Hal. So
no, I liked Howell a lot. So my big thing is I love quarterbacks who are looking to throw, who have balls. Like I can't stand this is why I hate Kenny Pickett. I hate Jimmy Garoppolo. I hate the check downs and the dink and dunk stuff. It's like, take some shots down the field. And you know what? Some of them are going to miss. Some of them are even going to get picked off. But the more you do that, the more your probability actually increases of hitting with some of those. And Sam Howell gets that. He loves to throw the ball deep down the field. He's got a cannon, and there's some nice mobility to go along with it. The whole problem all along has been they have committed basically nothing to Sam Howell. He was a 6th-round pick. There's kind of no reason for them to just say, all right, like we're committed, we're pot committed here to Sam Howell. So the protocol all along has been, you got to win enough games. It's not just about playing well. You've got to win enough games to keep them away from, being able to draft your replacement. And I'm not totally sure that they're going to be able to do that. Like if they end up in the, in the top 5, top 10, even, there's no way they're passing on, especially this quarterback class coming in. Like they're going to go after somebody, and it kind of doesn't matter how well Sam Howell was doing.
I wonder though too. I think they might win enough. Like against the Eagles are 7-1, the best team in the league, and and against non-Eagles teams, against non-Eagles,
good for
teams,
you.
They've been 3-3, so I do wonder if they kind of hang around that 500-ish range, and it basically at least doesn't get them a premier quarterback. I'm not sure what the mid kind of first round looks like for quarterbacks this year, but I think they could end up falling there. But Drew, you agree with that assessment? And were you a Hal guy prior to this season?
Not particularly. My plan for him all along for the couple leagues that I had him was, I hope he starts off well so I can trade him.
Yep.
And that's ultimately what I did. And I got out a little bit early in a couple of leagues and did not get as much back as I could have probably at this point, but I'm fine with that because now I have some position players in hand that I'm excited about that will be, for the foreseeable future, long-term starters for me. In one league, actually, yesterday, just traded for Dalton Kincaid straight up and a tight end premium. Feel great about that because I think he'll be there with the Bills for a long time. So Howell, if they had kept their defense intact, I think they would have a better shot of being close to that 500 team maybe at the end of the year. We'll see what happens now that Chase Young is gone. And I think for the rest of this season, especially like in redraft leagues, Sam Howell is going to be a gem, throwing it 45, 50 times a week just to try to hang in there. But John's totally right. If he doesn't win enough games, there's no reason for Washington to, not replace him immediately or get what they can for him, keep him as a backup. And yeah, I think for him, you hope he's maybe a career Ryan Fitzpatrick moving forward as maybe the best long-term value if you're just going to sit on him and push your chips in and say, I hope he continues the job next year. Maybe it's with a different team as another, he's a bridge every couple of years or something like that.
I really like that comparison because that's like time just above what I said. Career backup. That was not Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he was never like a career full-time starter either for more than like a year with any particular team. It was like he got like 2 years tops, and then he was going to the next team. I was just looking in the trade finder. Two guys we've talked about: Sam Howell or Kirk Cousins and Rashee Rice.
I'll take the package.
That's what I was thinking. I like what we've seen out of Rice. He's shown some flashes.
Yep.
I think it's entirely possible that going from this point forward, Kirk Cousins starts more games than Sam Howell in the league. So
yeah, I mean, it's possible that Rashee Rice outscores Sam Howell next year.
Yeah,
and you have Kirk Cousins on top of it.
Sure, yeah, especially if he improves on his rookie year. John, you agree? You take the Cousins side on that one?
Yeah, in a vacuum. I think it's pretty balanced though. So, if you're a contender, tossing in Rashee Rice to get a quarterback who's going to play the rest of the season, at least in theory, is more than worth it.
And I know, Drew, you said you basically were hoping that you were selling them anywhere you had them. So I would guess you're not interested in acquiring. Are you interested in acquiring them, John, in leagues you don't have them? Like, are you given the rise in price, most likely, are you kind of off, would you be off that?
Yeah, I'm probably staying away. I just feel like the kind of the probabilities just dictate that he's probably not a long-term starter, So it'll depend on what people are asking, but like in one league, I've got somebody trying to send me Howell and Marvin Mims for Devin Achane, and it's just kind of like that's that doesn't excite me enough to give up the guy who was well on his way to being offensive rookie of the year before the knee injury.
Look at John just lining up the segue there. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because our next guy, we're going to rotate through the positions at running back, who is in points per game, because even though he's only played a few games, but one of those games, he only played 3 games. One of those games was a 1.9, and yet he's still the RB1. So in points per game, because he had 2 monster games after that and then got hurt. So Devin Achane, I did not like the guy coming out, but I've loved what I've seen of him. He's so fast. I love him in that offense. I'm like willing to take the L on that one after 3 games where one wasn't even good. So, how high are you on him, John? Do you said that doesn't excite you for him. Are you are you like him a lot? I mean,
yeah.
You can't not like what he did in those 2 games, but obviously you can't expect that going forward. So what are you thinking?
Yeah. So my co-host Tommy Blair pointed out several weeks ago that Achane is getting something. I think he said something like 4 yards, averaging 4 yards before contact. So one of the fastest players in the league, and I don't know exactly like tactically how Mike McDaniel does this, but this is what he does. He's giving the fastest player in the league a 4-yard head start. So as long as that's, as long as they're able to do that, and they can really kind of keep the defense honest with the passing game as well. And I mean, they've got speed all over the field. It's kind of no wonder things are just wide open for him. So, you combine the speed, the elusiveness, the pass catching with just the fact that you've got, very possibly the best offensive play caller in the league right now. Giving him that type of advantage, it's just like, man, where's the downside?
Yeah, and it's not like we're going to expect him when he comes back from the injury to ever be like a workhorse. But he was putting up lines like it was like 10 for 100 and some yards or something, just rushing, and then he would catch a few, and then you have a couple touchdowns. So he just needs he can make his day in one play. He's that kind of running back. But Drew, do you have a decent amount of HN, and you expect this again, not necessarily 30 points a game or whatever it was in those 2 games, but you expect this going forward, like for the rest of the year once he comes back?
Yeah, I mean, I think what McDaniel's built there it's playing out about as well as you could have expected. So I am really sad that in one league early on, I think after week 1, I was pretty non-committal. I hadn't really figured out where I stood on him. And I made a push in one of the leagues that were in the Superflex Army 2 to try to go in on this year. And I moved him in a first to get DeAndre Swift, and I forget who else back.
Ooh.
And I'm looking back now, just absolutely kicking myself. But as far as where I am today, so a couple of weeks ago after Richardson went on IR, I actually moved Richardson in a 12-team Superflex league and a late first, I hope, which is mine, to get Dak and Achane and Hollywood back to, again, try to put myself in a position to contend toward the end of this year. And this is a league where we reward long touchdown plays as well. So that adds a little bit of fun for Achane if he can take one of these screens to the house 60 yards. So I'm pretty well in. And don't worry, John, I only moved Richardson because I've got Hurts and Stroud, and I got Dak back, and I think now I've got Aiden O'Connell still. So I'm still got some QBs on the bench there with Rodgers on IR for next year. But
when you first started laying out that trade, I cringed a little. I was like, "Tell me you got a quarterback in return, Drew." But yeah, Dak, yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
So, people hate Dak now. So,
but that's where I am on Achane, where he was the central piece. I was really more interested in getting Achane back than any of the other pieces, because I think once he comes off IR, you're right, Rocky. I'm expecting him to get maybe 10, 15 touches a game, but he only needs 1 or 2 of those to be really, really good. And all of a sudden he's, he could be a week winner.
Yeah. And and as John alluded to, that the offense in general is just so good. McDaniels is great at creating an offense. We've seen what Mostert is. Mostert's a top 10. I didn't put him on this list, but Mostert's a top 10 running back still, working some games with Achane. So, and then of course what Tyreek is doing this year is like otherworldly. So, I love Achane. I love him this year. I love him for the next couple because you can't expect much more than that from a running back. But as much as you can, he's a guy I want to have on my rosters. I don't think I've actually acquired any in season. I definitely have him on a few rosters because he was one of the guys, even though I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of guys in the late first and early second this year. And that's where you were getting him. So mostly in the late first, but once you got past that Johnston Flowers area, I was usually drafting either Achane or Charbonnet, and Charbonnet's not working out as good yet. So I wish I had a little more Achane, but yeah. So we'll move on to wide receiver. I'm going to stick with the young guys. I have an older guy on here too. Maybe we'll get to him later, but we have to talk about this guy, rookie sensation. And I think we did talk about him a little the last time I was on with Andrew. But Puka Nacua, John, how you feeling about Puka?
So good. This is this is just kind of the trajectory at this point is like elite, elite of the elite. We don't really see prospects take off to this extent this early on. Yeah. And
if he I was just gonna say if he was like a first round pick, he would be worth like 2 first plus at this point.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah, it sounds like maybe he is anyways. I don't know that he necessarily should be, but it's still a highly replaceable position at the end of the day. But when you get this type of signal this early on, that's pretty valuable, to know for a fact that, or not for a fact, but the probability is strongly in favor of him being able to continue this trajectory, which means, typically speaking, what we see is this type of season is really kind of the floor for a player like that for the next, 8-10 years, something like that. Like there's still plenty of ceiling for him to reach.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of it is that kind of. I think he was day 3, right? He was a 4th rounder,
Hmm.
5th round, or something like that. Yeah, that day 3 capital. Yeah, takes it a while for the price to go up, but it's getting there pretty quick with him. But we've seen. I mean, it's not. It doesn't happen all the time, but I mean, Tyreek was a day 3 guy. Amon-Ra was a day 3 guy, I believe. So you can definitely find gems there, and it looks like they got one. I mean, that's what I've said. I was sort of saying this like 3-4 games in, because I think you had like 20 targets in one of those games or something. I'm like, you don't start
Hmm.
this way and not be a really good player. Like, I don't care that
Yeah.
Cup's coming back. To me, at worst case, he's the Woods to Cup. And Woods was a high end 2, low end 1 for multiple years there with Cup. And Cup's not going to be there that much longer. I mean, he's what, 30 at this point? I think he hit 30.
Hmm.
So at least not at this level. He might be there a little while longer, but he's not going to be at this level for that much longer. So,
And that whole offense is about to be in transition. You know,
true.
you're also talking about a pretty old quarterback who
Hmm.
has a pretty lengthy injury history at this point. Like, at some point, you reshuffle the deck at quarterback, and that probably means moving on from Cooper Kupp at the same time, because you're not going to waste the last couple years of his productivity on a rookie quarterback.
And he's got a great play caller there also.
Hmm.
But Drew, you all in on Puka?
I wouldn't say I'm all in. I only had him in one spot, and actually just moved him in a small package to get Garrett Wilson back. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly hard to deny the early productivity. And yeah, I mean, I agree with John as far as you have enough evidence at this point. The body of work is large enough that it seems like this is as low as it's going to be. So yeah, I guess the question really is, how high is high? Do we think that he's got the athleticism, or he's going to develop his technique enough to be a top 10 wide receiver for multiple years down the road? And I don't know. I don't know that I feel super confident in that. So I definitely held on to him until I got an offer that I felt like I had to take. I was offered a first and a second a couple weeks ago. Turned that down because I felt like I could probably get more or get something that I like better. So I definitely held out. Wasn't ready to bail as quickly as I was on Sam Howell, but I mean, again, for what you had to use to get him most likely already in the draft or off waivers in some cases, I mean, there's no reason not to hold on to him.
Yeah, I have one league where I sold him like 3 or 4 games in, even though I was excited and I was saying he's going to be good. I think it was offered like a mid to late 24 first, and I thought that was just great value for a guy that had only done it for a few games. It was a day 3 pick and all that. I drafted in the 4th probably, or late 3rd. I don't remember exactly where. I do have, and I do have quite a few shares anyway, so that made it a little easier because I just kind of liked the opportunity there. It didn't seem like they had much beyond Cup. So I thought he could get a little bit of a role. I was not expecting this, but it's been a pleasant surprise on some of my contending teams to have my like 4th round rookie pick be a regular starter for me. But we'll continue the rookie theme as we move to tight end. Sam Laporta, rookie sensation here. So I'll start with you this time, Drew. How high are we on Sam Laporta? I know I like maybe a month ago there was Laporta versus Pitts tweets going out. I don't even think that's a question at this point. It was then, it's not now. But like Sam Laporta to the moon, it seems like. How high are you on him? Have you acquired him anywhere, or would you be looking to sell at this high price?
I am not in a position in most leagues to give what that person is asking for to get him back. In the leagues that I have him, you couldn't offer me enough, I don't think, to take him off my hands because of the positional advantage there. For me, it's him and Andrews at this point in Dynasty moving forward. And I wouldn't be mad at whichever one you think you want more if you're in a startup. Those are 2 guys, depending on what your premium is. If you want a real fun build, if you're not going to go QBX, where you could, if you have a turn, you could take both of them back to back or close to back, and have a very interesting advantage there as well. But yeah, as far as where I have them, I'm keeping them, and I will always kick tires and throw an offer out here or there. I think the only type of buy window we're going to get on him is if he gets injured somehow, which I hope he doesn't, or if something totally implodes with Detroit where they just are not producing offensively at all, and somebody gets antsy. But outside of that, I think it's going to be real hard to get him from anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it as it should be. I mean, it's interesting to me, man. Right now, at least to me, the top 5 tight ends in redraft leagues, and I would make a strong case for the same thing in Dynasty as well. But beyond Kelsey and Andrews, it's a bunch of young dudes. It's Laporta and it's Kincaid and it's Trey McBride. It looks like that, like we just restocked that position and we've got some super young guys here. And man, like what it does for the economy of your league to just kind of have like this wave of young tight ends come in and just kind of take over at the top when we've been waiting and searching for so long for this to happen. We've been, convincing ourselves that Kyle Pitts was going to do it, and Chigakonkwo and like all of these young tight ends that we had just been, we were so excited about. We were really just kind of looking for this refresh at the position. And now with those 3 guys, with Laporta, Kincaid, and Trey McBride, I think we finally kind of have that. And every single one of them was relatively cheap.
Yep.
Yeah, I like Laporta. I'm not willing to, like, I think what as Drew was saying, I'm not willing to pay the price it would take to get him at this point. And for whatever reason, I just did not end up with a lot of. I have more Mayer than Laporta, so which he's had a game or two there, but not quite as consistently good as Laporta has been in his rookie season. But I still have hope there.
What do you think you have to add to Pitts to get to Laporta now?
Is
it a first?
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh,
that's what I was
Like
thinking.
asking myself.
Yeah,
I was like, would I do it for a second? Nah, I don't think so.
I don't think I'd. Yeah.
No, I would not move Laporta. I would not downgrade from Laporta to Pitts unless that's a top half first.
Yeah, I think it's got to be at least somewhere in the first. Yes.
Would you, in a premium league, what would you add to Puka to get to Laporta? Or are they pretty equal for you? Since wide receiver seems to be a little bit more replaceable.
Yeah, I think you do need to add a little bit because of that, because we mostly play in tight end premium leagues, like you said, and the TA leagues, which I mean 11 of, are all 0.75. So that's a pretty hefty, and I have others that I'm in there 2.0, where the tight ends can go for a lot there. So,
but Puka in a second.
Yeah, I think I would make it a second for, which is crazy, which means essentially we're valuing Puka over Pitts when Pitts was like the end all be all like a year and a half ago, and like all Dynasty outside of quarterbacks.
So let's say you have both Puka and Pitts on your team. Would you rather give up Puka and the second, or Pitts and a mid first to get Laporta back?
I'll let John take that one.
I'd rather give up Puka. Like the big thing for me, like it's almost turning into similar to quarterbacks, where if I'm going to trade you a quarterback, I expect to get a quarterback in return. Like it's getting to that point for me with with Laporta, just kind of the tight end position in general, but especially those guys that we've kind of identified. I think that rather than the second, I think I would be looking for a tight end with some upside. And that's, if I was going to give up Laporta, that's kind of what it would take for me. I would need at least the potential to replace him. It's such a scarce position.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think I am with John. It's just I've always been a big elite tight end guy, and he's certainly like you never see this kind of start from a rookie tight end. So it certainly seems like he's on that track, and I don't really, like I said, I don't really like paying up that much for it. I maybe hope his value dips at some point for some reason. Because I mean, like you said, I think we're talking like 2 firsts at least at this point, to pry Laporte away from somebody. So yeah. So I don't want to pay that, but I would think about Puka in a second, though. I can see that. Okay, we'll maybe hit a couple more of these surprises here, and then we'll get into the disappointments. Let me see. Who do I want to go to next? Well, we'll do the other quarterback I put down here, because a lot of people were wary of him coming into the season, concussion issues, and never been fully consistent. But he's top 5 now, without really being a mobile quarterback. So maybe that's a red flag, that he's just getting lucky, but we've all talked about Mike McDaniels. It's Tua I'm talking about. It's Tua here. Tua Tagovailoa. I think I said that right. I've always been a big Tua guy. Me and Russ have always been big Tua guys. I'm really happy to see that it's finally paying off. He's got the weapons. He's got the coach. And Tyreek's not long term, but Waddle is, and Achane potentially is, at least as, like I said, long term as running backs can get, and McDaniel seems to be. So I'm still all in, and I've been kind of hoping for this and kind of expecting at least top 10-ish going forward, even before he'd really proven that. So, Drew, you've been a Tua guy, right?
Yeah, I've liked Tua. I think the concussions got overblown. It took me back to like Brandon Cooks a few years ago, where people were out on him, which I know it got a little scary for him there, but still, the quarterback is the most protected position in the game right now. So, and he's got all of the weapons. He's young. I think coming out, a lot of people were saying, he was probably the most accurate quarterback coming out of his draft class. And with the speed that he's got around him, it's hard not to love that. I mean, he's performing the way that I think we all expected or hoped that Joe Burrow would, with Higgins and Chase and some of the weapons that they've got there in Cincinnati. So pleasant surprise for sure. And hopefully a lot of people got a good deal for Tua. I'm kicking myself in one of the leagues I'm in with Larry Monkey. He was trying to get rid of Tua early in the year, and I should have made a stronger push, because we were talking about Rodgers for his beloved Jets, plus a little something to get to Tua, and I should have done it before week 1. But yeah, I'm really happy for Tua, though. I think he seems like a good kid, trying to do some good work out there, and it's paying off for sure, both for him and for us that are watching him.
And I know a former host here, maybe future host at some point again, Scott Sidlow was never a big Tua guy. He didn't like Tua. He doesn't like lefty quarterbacks in general. But he would always bring that up about Tua. But John, were you a Tua guy prior to the season, and are you a Tua guy now?
I'm definitely a Tua guy now. I was a Tua guy last year, but when he came out of college, I was not. To me, you get a smaller quarterback like that who doesn't run. It's like, what exactly is the path to this actually working? Well, the path is give him Tyreek Hill, draft Jalen Waddle, and then bring in Mike McDaniel to run the whole thing. That's literally the one way that you make this work. So, and they did that. So you have to buy in at that point. They found the formula to where you can have a short, immobile, left-handed quarterback, and actually, turn him into a very accurate, very productive pocket passer.
Yeah. Is he the mirror image of Drew Brees at this point for us?
Yeah. I think that's the right comp, right?
Yeah, I like that.
And that kind of was the archetype, is like, he's got to be Drew Brees. And that's where I was saying, I'm out if your only path is to be one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, that's a pretty narrow path,
right? And one of the all-time outliers too, in terms of his productivity. So, but yeah, again, they put him in a position where he can actually do that. He can be Drew Brees. So, yeah, you got to be in. Anyone who's worried about concussions they don't understand how concussions work.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thing too. I never I was never that worried about the concussions. Yes, it could be bad if he gets another one or two, or particularly big hit. But I say this all the time. Like, there's multiple guys that we've been worried about the next concussion. Like Brandon Cooks, we were worried about concussions, and he just keeps playing year after year. And this is the year he finally kind of fell off a little bit production wise, but it has nothing to do with concussions. It has to do with being an older wide receiver at this point. Devontae Adams, people I think forget early in his career had multiple concussions, including a particularly bad one, big hit, and it was never really much of an issue again. Like, it happened. There does happen where guys, I think fairly rarely, where guys really get like knocked out of the league by concussions, but there are guys it happens to. But people I think tend to blow that out of proportion when they see, especially. I remember one of them particularly was on like a Sunday or Monday night game, and his body kind of did that freezing up thing that happens with concussions sometimes, and it freaked everybody out, and as it should. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get concussions every time you're on the field there. So I'm with you guys on the whole concussion thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll touch on one more guy here because I wanted to get your opinion. I'll start with you again. I'll go back to you, John, because I'm not sure what to make of this guy, Nico Collins at wide receiver 16. Not quite in the top 10 like a lot of the other guys we talked about at their position, but definitely a lot better than I expected this year. It's taken him a couple years to kind of, there was some Nico Collins love over the start of his career. But it's finally sort of coming to fruition here. Are you? I know you know, and I agree with you to an extent that wide receiver isn't the most important position. But are you buying in that this could be like his baseline going forward, where he's a wide receiver 2 for you?
Yeah, I think probably so. I mean, for the rest of the season, I'm all in. Like, I think that he's one of the most productive receivers that you're going to get, for a contending team, without breaking the bank. In terms of Dynasty, so I have a little bit of an analogy in my head with this entire Houston Texans team at this point. Like, I see a lot of parallels with the Cincinnati Bengals. They go get Joe Burrow. You've got your T. Higgins. That's Nico Collins here. I kind of think Tank Dell is probably your Tyler Boyd in this story, unfortunately. And now you've got your elite quarterback. All that's left is to give him an alpha wide receiver. Give him a Jamar Chase. I think that's coming, and it's going to push Nico Collins to wide receiver 2 on his offense, and make it a little difficult to find the meat on the bone that we're kind of used to with him. But I think that I do feel that he can produce, wide receiver 2 type of numbers. The tough part is going to be just like with T. Higgins. It's going to be predicting when are you going to get that from him, but that's going to be there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, with your Bengals comparison, I mean, T. Higgins is pretty productive and very highly valued from a dynasty perspective. So if he is that, even if they have a Jamar Chase there, especially with the way Stroud has looked, he's had a couple rougher games, I think these last couple, but he was on fire to start the season. He looking great I don't think he threw a pick through his first 6 games or something, so especially from a real NFL perspective. He's looking like the guy. So I expect further improvement in year 2. So that's only going to help, even if they get an upgrade, a real wide receiver 1. I mean, that alone could help Nico in some ways too. Take the pressure off him, not as tough a coverage, things like that. So, but Drew, what are your thoughts? And then we'll get to a few of these disappointments before moving on.
I love Nico. Another guy, like you didn't pay much to get him when you either drafted him. I think in a couple leagues, I got him off waivers last year or this offseason when people made cuts for the rookie draft. So, yeah, I mean, I love the guy. He's been a very nice surprise in a couple of contending teams. And as long as, Stroud has got Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary, who he's handing the ball to, I think there will be plenty of passing volume, and they don't really have a tight end to speak of. We'll see where Dalton Schultz goes, I guess, and if he continues to demand some more targets. But ultimately, I'll keep him. He's in that weird space where you're probably not going to get what you deserve to get for him, and people are going to want more than you're willing to pay to get him. So,
Yeah.
send some feelers out and see if you can get them from somebody who maybe doesn't believe or is thinking maybe more long term for when he does maybe go into the wide receiver 2 spot for the better part of his career here. And maybe you get somebody that's wants to get out sooner than later because they think they can replace him cheaply anyways, in the draft or something like that. But I'd be happy to get him if you can get him at a reasonable cost.
Okay, so let's move on to some of these disappointments here. We'll probably just kind of run through a few of these real quick and then get to the Find Me a Trade, because we're already pushing an hour here and I don't want to be here all night. So but the one that immediately popped to my mind when I was talking disappointments is Trevor Lawrence. So John, where are you at on Trevor Lawrence? QB 19 in points per game on the season. We were all worried year one, and then we blamed it on Urban Meyer, and he did bounce back with a pretty good year two, but it's not looking great here year three. So what's going on, John?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just find out that Trevor Lawrence is, has that old Russell Wilson thing. He's a second half quarterback, and so I'm definitely not completely out because we've seen it. We've seen what he's capable of, and it's elite. But yeah, I mean, the fact that you're not getting it right now, I mean, it creates a buy window. I guess that's the positive here, but there doesn't seem to be an explanation other than the fact that the running game is working really well. Travis Etienne, running back 3-4, something like that for the season. So, they're running the ball well. They're playing decent defense. Like that's kind of the formula that the NFL teams tend to go for, and just don't have to use Trevor Lawrence quite as much. It's frustrating for fantasy purposes, but it won't always be that way.
What about you, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I still like him. I would certainly take advantage of a buy window if you think you can get one here. And I'm not moving on from him because I'm concerned about anything at this point. So if I'm getting low ball offers, I'm rejecting right away. And because I don't think a lot of people out there at face value are probably looking at him at market value or what his true value is. So, but yeah, I'm still in on him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that because I don't like to pay up for quarterbacks. I don't know if I was all in on him as everybody else was. Not that I didn't think he was going to be good, just that I wasn't willing to give up the price. Like from the second he was drafted, he was super expensive. He was like a top 10 quarterback dynasty value wise. So, and he hasn't really been a top 10 quarterback yet. So if this is a buy window, if people are, because he's QB 19 are willing to maybe give you him for a little less, I'd consider that. But again, I'm generally not paying up. So I do have a little bit of concern that we're now into year 3 and he hasn't really fully shown it over a full season. Even last year, I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. If he was in the top 12, it was low end top 12 in terms of points. So I'd like to see kind of an elite season from him, and we haven't gotten that yet. So if it doesn't happen by next year, I'm not sure we're getting it. If you're 4 years in the league and haven't done that, not that he's not a starting quarterback for years to come, but I'm just talking like that guy I really want to pay a whole bunch for. So that's kind of where I am on him. But we'll go to running back, and I think I'm just going to hit one of each of these guys. Ramondre Stevenson is an interesting one to me because everyone loved him last year. Everyone loved him coming into the season. And now he is RB 33. So, John, what are your thoughts on Ramondre Stevenson? Is it just a product of this horrible Patriots offense with Mac Jones at quarterback? But is anything going to change enough in the near future? I mean, he is a running back. He's also a bit of an older running back from when he came into the league. So is it even worth the time investing in him at this point with the bad offense this year and who knows what at quarterback going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the silver lining could be when they rehire Josh McDaniels, this is going to be a very different looking offense. But yeah, the quote unquote Patriot way has just always been a huge pain in the ass for fantasy purposes. And Like they just try and outthink everybody, and they'll cut off their nose to spite their face. And so, it just kind of, we just have to kind of plan on, the better he plays, the less they're gonna let him, the less they're gonna game plan for him. So that's just kind of a Patriot thing, and it just, I don't know what you're doing if you've got him. Like, you're not getting anything in return. You do have to just kind of ride it out.
I was just gonna say, I think you have to, at this point.
Yeah, but I'm certainly not gonna try and acquire anymore.
Same.
Okay, well, then we can move on. That's hashtag in-depth analysis from Joe. But yeah, we do want to kind of rush through some of these. So Chris Olave is one I wanted to touch on because I feel like I was lower on him last year than a lot of people were. Maybe it's just because of the other podcast I host, where Russ was regularly giving up like 2 first-plus value for him. Him and John Bosch, just like Chris Olave to the moon. And I always kind of thought he was good, but I'm not convinced he was more than a wide receiver 2, and I'm not paying those kind of prices for wide receiver 2. But because he was so good as a rookie, we expect improvement, all that stuff. So I'm going to add so that you can't just say same this time, Drew.
Get ready.
Wide receiver 35 in points this year, by the way. So he's not even a wide receiver 2 right now. I think he has 1 touchdown on the year, 1 or 2 touchdowns on the year. Not been as peppered as he was the first couple games with targets. So what are we doing? And it would seem like his QB situation. I mean, Derek Carr has been able to feed a top receiver in the past. Derek Carr may not be elite, but Amari Cooper had great seasons with him. Devontae Adams had a very a Devontae Adams season with him last year. But Chris Olave has just been kind of meh. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I still like him. If you have a dip in price from a league mate, I would certainly be okay adding him to my roster. I mean, he's sitting there with Michael Thomas, who's not getting any younger, which Michael Thomas is doing better than I expected him to do this year at his age, with kind of the hiatus he had with his injuries, which I think could probably be eating into some of the targets that we had hoped Olave got. And then, fun surprise with Rashid Shaheed being able to kind of take the top off the defenses here and being pretty efficient with his targets. So, Carr is getting a couple of those deep shots a game. And, I think every other game it feels like Shaheed is getting a catch and getting a deep ball and a touchdown. So I'm fine to be patient with him. So I'll go get him if I don't know what I guess market value is probably a first or so for him because he is so young and he had such a good first year. I don't know that I'm going to pay, if I'm a contender, I would certainly give up probably what I think is my later first. If I'm rebuilding, I don't know that I'm going to give a top 4 or 5 pick in 2024 to get him back. I think I'd probably sit on that and let the value grow on my early pick. But I like him overall.
By the way, Shaheed, wide receiver 20 to Olave's wide receiver 35 in points per game. I found that interesting. I almost, I didn't really think Shaheed was worth talking about, but he certainly could have gone on that surprise list as even as low as wide receiver 20 because you were expecting zero, not zero, but very little out of Rashid Shaheed. But Hogue, you think were you? Again, I know you're not a wide receiver guy, but were you having him as a wide receiver 1 coming into the season? Are you disappointed with what we're seeing, or are you maybe more a little like me, where maybe you weren't as high on him as the rest of the community?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of I was there. But I mean, there was just kind of this big block of wide receivers kind of in that low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 range, more of them than actually fit into those rankings. So it was like, it could be him. It could just as easily be Devontae Adams, or, it could be this year. It could be, Stephon Diggs. Like, there were just kind of Jalen Waddle. Like, there were just so many players that you could have expected in that range. And most of them were going to disappoint us. Like that's just how it works, you know. But I mean, all the efficiency is there. The air yards are there. The yards per route run, like it's all there. It's just the quarterback sucks. Derek Carr is awful, and he always has been. And they're not going to stick with him forever. So, it kind of screams by to me. Just tons of regression, positive regression coming. Do we get to talk about Devonta Smith still?
Sure, if you want to, John.
Yes, I really want to. I almost just said same. Like
I was waiting for it.
Just so we could skip to Devonta Smith. But I was like, all right, we'll give some actual analysis here. But so AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill right now are the Infinity Stones. Like that, you get that combination and you can't be beat. So it just kind of stands to reason to me that so much of the production, so much of the workload being funneled to those two guys is because they're not going to do this again. They're going to be fine, but they're not going to do this again. And so, to me, it makes Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith screaming buys, just because next year this gets way more evenly distributed.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw that, last year with both of them. They're both doing a lot better than they're doing this year. I actually not that he's been awful or anything, but I almost put Jalen Waddle on the list too. He's higher up than Devonta, so I left him off the list. But he's in wide receiver 20 something, which is again probably lower than we were expecting from him. But it's exactly what you said. Tyreek is going nuts, and a lot of the rest of the passing game is just going to take a hit because of that. But unless you wanted to talk about Smith too, I won't even make you say same this time, Drew. That's good.
Deal.
I'm just going to call the episode title is just going to be same. But we're going to finish up with the guy we mentioned earlier, Kyle Pitts. What are you doing with him? Not in relation to Sam Laporta, Drew. Are you? Because I still like the idea of getting Pitts. I still think he was a unicorn coming out. Just the athletic ability, everything he showed on tape, and I still think it's there. He's still only, I think, 23. So
super young.
I mean, super young. For a lot of tight ends don't hit their prime until like 27-ish. So he's not even close to that. And we already saw he had a 1,000-yard season in his rookie year. He just didn't have the touchdowns. And then he got Arthur Smith. So I still think it's there. I still think we might see it. Probably, maybe not while Arthur Smith is there. It doesn't seem like this year. Unless, Heineke can unlock something, throwing deep balls or just slinging it. But where you at with Pitts? I want to acquire him where I can. I still think we could get superstar potential out of him.
Well, what are you willing to give for him?
I feel like you don't have to pay much more than like a little over a first, maybe. Like I think a first plus a small plus probably gets it done. Like a first and maybe not small, but like a first and a second, something like that. Whereas like 2 years ago, you had to get you'd be lucky if you could get Pitts for 3 firsts. At that point, he was practically a first-round starter pick when he was coming out. So
we've said a lot of nice things about the Eagles tonight, Rock. So can I be a little bit slanderous for just a second?
Sure.
Does Dallas Goedert get you Kyle Pitts just straight up?
It might. I would
have to think that's close.
Yeah. Dallas Goedert isn't exactly lighting things up either. He's been very up and down this year.
Yeah, he still has the name value. He's attached to the best offense in the league. Certainly the best quarterback at the moment.
Goedert for Pitts on a contender, even knowing Pitts is probably going to score a little less.
Yeah.
You agree, Drew? Same.
Yeah. I think.
Big.
I mean, if I have Goedert and I'm contending, I'm probably hanging on to him just because he's, I think there is AJ Brown is on a historic pace right now, right? Was it 6 games with 125 yards plus, which even if that continues for this season, there's going to be a couple of games mixed in where it'll distribute differently. I mean, Devonta Smith has had a couple of games already this season where, he's probably outperformed significantly what people expected in projections for the week. So until I like the idea of Taylor Heineke, I like that he's willing to chuck the ball. You hope that he gives Pitts an opportunity. So this may be, the lowest you're going to get Pitts right now, because if Heineke comes in and has a couple good weeks where, Pitts all of a sudden has 6-7 catches for 100 yards a game and mix in a touchdown, God forbid, maybe he bounces back and he's worth, a lot more than that first and a second. So yeah, I think if you like him and you still like the idea of his athletic profile and what he could be in a year or two, I certainly would be comfortable going and getting him. I'm not there, and I'm okay to miss on that, I think, at that cost. I get the idea that tight ends are such a hard position to fill, but I don't think he ever gets back to that place where Kyle Pitts is going to demand more than 2 firsts either, or the equivalent. So I'd be okay sitting on that. And if I have to pay up somewhere, if I have to play a little bit of a longer game here and add some ammunition to my draft capital or something to get him in another year, I'd rather have to face that music than, give a bunch up now and be stuck with Kyle Pitts as where he is now as whatever tight end he is currently.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure where he is in terms of, if you're talking value. I never said he's actually the tight end 11 on the year, which is not awful, but it's not what 10 million tight ends can be tight end 11 with the way tight ends score. So
yeah,
but we're gonna get into our favorite segment here. If I can find the little sounder, because we got to play that every time, and apparently I can't. So there it is from Brian Haar.
Find me a trade.
There we go.
Find me a trade.
Okay, so find me a trade this week, submitted by Charles at El Chumbo on Twitter. Drew, I mentioned you can kind of give the here, and then I will set up the roster as I pull it up here, and hopefully I can remember how to share it on my screen.
Yeah, so we're talking about a pretty typical league here overall. A 12-team Superflex PPR. There's a 1.5 tight end premium, and then 1 point bonus for big plays, which is fun. It's only -1 for interceptions, but it is -1 for sacks as well. And then a 5-point passing touchdown for quarterbacks, which is interesting. And then starting 10, so quarterback, a couple of running backs, a couple of wide receivers, a tight end, 3 flex, and a super flex. So some pretty standard parts of this, and then a couple of unique twists in the scoring.
Let me get this off there. Okay, and his roster is he's I think you mentioned there he's 4-4, and kind of in the middle of the pack was the team we talked about earlier. His roster is quarterback Ryan Tannehill, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and then a couple backups, NFL backups. And at running back, he has Ramondre, who we talked about, Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook as the key pieces. Wide receiver, Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton, Drake London, Rashad Bateman, Jacoby Myers, I think I skipped over, MVS, and a couple lower end guys. And then pretty barren at tight end with Gerald Everett, Hayden Hurst, and David Njoku's got Mike Williams on IR. Not really much else significant on his tax year IR, and does have, I believe, all his picks. I didn't see any extras, I don't think, but I think he has all his
picks. He only has the first and the fourth this year, and then I think he has all his 25 picks.
Oh, okay, my bad. I was looking maybe at the wrong one then. Okay, so that is his roster. There we go. So we'll get into our trades here. And Drew, if you have yours there, I'll let you start, and then we can the other ones.
Yeah, so I actually looked it up a little bit earlier. He is actually batting .409, so just over 400 in all play for this league here.
Right, what I was saying, yeah.
Yeah, so outkicking his coverage a little bit by his record, and then the points scored. So you alluded to it. We're probably going to go against what we all said we would lean toward with a middling team, but based on his situation here, And I think the age of some of his players, I suppose you could say with Mixon and Thomas and a couple of the other guys, you have to maybe go all in. But with the state of his quarterbacks, it's a different version. It's an uglier version of QBX here with some of the guys he's got in his roster. So it's going to be hard for him to really throw in a meaningful way this year, I think. So I'm looking at taking a guy like Michael Thomas, who's been a solid, double-digit points week in and week out. If you can get somebody to get Mixon off your hands as well, I'd love to send those two over to Wu-Tang and look at getting a Quentin Johnson and a Cade Otton back maybe. And if you can squeeze one of the rookie wide receivers he's got in the Mims or Jaden Reed, that would be bonus. Maybe you have to add your fourth to get that or something. But if I can get those two older guys off my roster for Quentin Johnson, who is a little bit of a polarizing figure right now, I'm still in on him. Hopefully Wu-Tang, who is doing okay at wide receiver, maybe would like a little bit more steady production, would take Michael Thomas in exchange. And then why not take a shot on another young tight end, Cade Otton here to add to your options moving forward. So that's what I'm looking at. If I can get that value back, get that youth back for a couple of guys that are probably in the last meaningful season or two of their career here.
Yeah, I like that, and I think you could get maybe Mims thrown in there, especially he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth over the last month after having some big splash plays in September.
Yeah. So with the the extra bonus point for the long scores or whatever, he'd be a fun guy, if like a bye week replacement maybe next year or two, if that's how he continues to get used. Maybe you hope he's Rashid Shaheed, right?
Yeah. Not a sentence you hear often. Let me get into mine and then we can go into John's, because it's funny. I always try and do these without looking at whatever the other two put on the sheet, and then I put mine on there. And basically John's is just a bigger version of mine. So so we'll give you these two different options, Charles, and you can pick if you want to go a little smaller or a little bigger. So my trade was to trade Tony Pollard, again, going with the same idea Drew had and John's going to have, which is leaning out of this year. Again, he's already seventh because he's the lowest 4-4 team in terms of points. It's got the 400 all play record, like you said, and this roster is very, very shaky in terms of viability this year and viability going forward. So so I'm looking to kind of get look to next year and beyond. So trading Tony Pollard and Michael Thomas, and I threw a third in there just to try and get it done because I want the pick too, which is to team Tool for T Higgins in a second. Tool's 5-3. He's kind of in the mix. There's actually two kind of like super teams here, so it depends on how hard they're trying. The rest of them are all trying to contend. There's two teams that are like over 200 to 300 points more than everybody else in the league. So, but Tool's got a pretty good team. But he does have, I noticed too, Jamar Chase and T Higgins, which obviously you can start both, but me personally, it's not something I like to do. I actually have a team with Chase and Higgins, and I've been trying to move Higgins for a running back because I need a running back. So I kind of think that just a little psychological thing of having both guys could help a little bit. And I believe I had the roster up here. Where is Tool's roster? Yeah, he's pretty light at running back too, which would help with this because he's got Montgomery, who's hurt, will be coming back soon, but they're on bye this week. Gus Edwards and Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, like nothing dependable there, and he has to start two, I believe. So it makes a lot of sense. He's contending. And the second he can assume won't be super high. So then our guy, the outcast team, Charles gets T Higgins back long term. Could maybe even get a value, but wait, did they re-sign him? I don't think they re-signed him, right?
I don't remember
because I know his contract's coming up. I know there were trade talks. Yeah, I didn't think so. I just didn't want to say it and then be wrong. So no, because I was just thinking it is possible he could end up being a wide receiver one somewhere in the near future too. If they decide to move on from him, which especially after signing Burrow to the giant contract, get to sign Chase to a giant contract. So Yeah. So anyway, T. Higgins, I like it going forward. I like getting the second thrown in there. That's why I said I'd be willing to throw in the third, just to, even if it's just an upgrade of picks. I'd much rather always have a second. So John, what do you think of that one specifically? And then you can tell me how you made it better.
Yeah, I'm so I'm obviously good with yours. But yeah, so I talked about Devonta Smith earlier, so I threw him in as well, to try and get him as well. So to me, Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, Jacoby Myers, I think that gets you close. I'd still be willing to throw in a little bit of draft capital, especially in 2025, because you've got 2 years to recover that. So, I'm willing to make that move just to get those two young foundational wide receivers. T. Higgins in Houston. How about that? Jamar Chase, Nico Collins. I think that'd be an interesting one. But either way, either he's back in Cincinnati on one of the most explosive offenses in the league, or he's on to somewhere else. To me, again, Devonta Smith, there's a ton of positive regression coming when negative regression hits for AJ Brown. So, the big protocol here, I was kind of looking at trades for quarterbacks as well, and I was like, let's build up some ammo a little bit first and then start working on that. But honestly, the only guy that I would have any interest in keeping on this roster right at the moment is Drake London. Beyond that, everybody can go, and a lot of them should go. You're really just kind of trying to strip this down to the foundational pieces, the guys with a long-term career expectancy, and at the positions where that actually exists. And to me, at this point, it's essentially Drake London. So start a wide receiver, build up that foundation a little bit, and then the trades kind of cascade and they just keep getting bigger from there, until you kind of rebuild wide receiver and quarterback and possibly tight end, and then detail it with some running backs later.
Yep, yeah. I like it a lot. I like yours better than mine. After I saw it, the only issue I could see at all with it is just that he doesn't have a ton of wide receiver depth, the other team. So but you could just throw in some more. Give him Michael Thomas, like yep. I was doing. So give him Michael Thomas and Myers and Mixon and Pollard, and I would still do that for Devonta Smith and T. Higgins. Yeah. So maybe that makes it work. He still gets at least two receivers back plus the upgrade at running back. But yeah, so good trades. Again, I think John improved on mine, so I appreciate that. But with that, I'm going to finish up here with some of our stuff. But first, John, you know what? And I didn't do this at the beginning. I gave your Twitter handle, but I didn't let them, let you say to all the people out there, I think a lot of people who listen to us probably, if they don't listen to you, at least know where they can find you. But tell them anyway, John.
I thought you were going to say, I gave your Twitter handle, but not your X handle. So at Superflex Dude on X, I freaking hate that app.
I don't call it X.
Much.
I refuse to do it.
Yeah. I get every single tweet, whether I'm mentioned or it's my own, it's not even called a tweet anymore. But yeah, every single post gets liked by a different porn bot these days. Yeah. Just one of many, many reasons. Yep. It's a cesspool, but you can still find me there at Superflex Dude, if you insist. And then host of the Superflex Super Show and writer and ranker at dynastyleaguefootball.com.
Yep. So really appreciate you coming on, John. Always love talking to you.
Likewise, brother.
Yep. Had a great time tonight. Now I will get to our stuff, which is just to say I am at Dynasty FF Addict. Drew's at DR_PRA. Andrew doesn't get his Twitter handle given because he's not here. You can find the pod at Dynasty Junkies and also follow the DAP Network at DAP_network and on YouTube, where you can watch us when we go live. And make sure you give us a rating and review, and please follow us if you've enjoyed what you heard here. The rate and review definitely helps a lot. It helps people find us. And I think that's everything I need to say. So, Drew, why don't you take us out?
Junkies out.